Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Rabbi.
We're learning Mishna Beitza, Parak Aleph, Chapter 1, Mishna Yud, Mishna 10. This is a continuation of discussion of sending gifts. Mishalchin Kalim, we can send Kalim here, which typically means vessels. Here it means clothing or cloths. Bein Tefurin, Bein Shenim Tefurim, whether they're sewn together as in a garment or whether they are not sewn together. And even though they have a mixture in them, even though they may be shotness is a prohibition to wear a garment made out of wool and linen. So even if these articles that you're sending are made of wool and linen, still you'd be able to send them on Yontif as a gift. And they have a Yontif use. Okay, so now let's explain what's going on here. You're sending these articles. So the Mishnah says if it has a yontif use, you can send it. If it doesn't have a yontif use, then you're involved in an effort that has no purpose, which you can't do on yontif. Now, we say that you can send the cloths that are sewn together. They're sewn together, that they're clothing. They have a use. Even if they're not sewn together, the cloths can be used as a covering. You can cover yourself with it. And we say that even if they have shotness in them, even if they're made of wool and linen, how could that be? You're not allowed to wear shot. You're not allowed to benefit, or you're not allowed to wear shotness. So what it means is like this. Apparently, they had these cloths that were very hard, very stiff. So you wouldn't use them to cover yourself to give you warmth. When we say that you can't wear something or even sit on something that's shotness, or cover yourself with shotness, that's talking about where the shotness warms you. But if we're talking about something very hard that's not going to warm you, what do you use it for? Use it for sitting on, use it for laying down on. So then there's no problem with the shotness. So therefore, if you're selling these cloths and they're sewn together as a garment, that's fine. If they're not sewn together and they're not shotness, you can cover yourself with it. If they are shotness and they have to be hard enough that you wouldn't have any kind of warmth benefit from them, but you would use them for sitting or lying upon. Then we say, and they have a yontif use, then you can go ahead and send them on yontif as a gift. However, let's say anything that cannot be used on yontif may not be sent as a gift on yontif, doesn't fulfill a yontif need, right? It's got to be for some kind of yontif need or some kind of possible yontif need. But if it cannot be used on yontif, it has no purpose on yontif, whatever it may be, then you can't send it because then it's considered you're putting in the effort of sending it for no purpose. But the Mishnah qualifies. Aval loy sandal hamesumar. One may not send what they call the nailed sandals, nor a sandal that is not sewn together. Now, when the Mishnah says that you cannot send these two things, one of them has nothing to do really. One of them is a very specific prohibition on Shabbos and Yontif. The sages prohibited wearing these sandals, meaning the ones that have these nails. Now, the way they describe it, the sandal mesumar is the Medrash refers to wooden sandals whose parts are held together with iron nails that slightly protrude. Now, the sages prohibited wearing these sandals on Shabbos and Yontif because of a tragic event. A group of people wearing such sandals once gathered in a cave to hide from enemies. When they heard noises from above, they panicked, fearing that they had been discovered, and ran to escape. In the stampede that followed, many were killed because of the nails in their sandals. To prevent similar tragedies, the sages prohibited wearing these sandals outside on days when people gathered together, such as the Shabbos and Yontif. The situation there was a very specific one. They were hiding. But the Chazal decided that in any time where there's a big gathering and maybe a stampede can chas v'shalom take place, that is where they said that on those days where people get together in large groups, where people gather together, that is where they said not to wear the sandal. So you can't send that sandal on Yontif because you can't wear it on Yontif. Okay. Also, it says not to send a shoe that is not sewn together. Okay. Well, if it's not sewn together, what could you even think about doing with it? So the Bartanura says, even the pieces are temporarily attached with small wooden pegs. The shoe is not considered usable on Yontif, may not be sent. It's kind of very temporarily held together. I'm assuming it's not really going to have a good chance. It's not going to last too long. It's not really usable, and therefore you cannot send that on Yontif either. Then the Mishnah continues. Rabbi Yehuda says, "Af loy min olavin." You cannot send a white shoe. No white shoes. Mipnei shetzarech umen, because it still needs a craftsman to work on them. So Bartanur explains, in where Yehuda lived, they did not wear shoes before they had been blackened, meaning they made of leather, and white means it's still light, and they would blacken them. So where Yehuda lived, they would not wear the shoes unless they were blackened. So since blackening is prohibited on Yontif under the malacha of dyeing, white shoes were not usable, they're on Yontif. So Rabbi Yehuda seems to be, people do not wear the they don't wear the light shoes, they don't wear the leather shoes until they're dyed black. You cannot send those undyed shoes because people wouldn't wear them. Therefore, they have no use on Yontif, so you can't send them. Zeh klal. This is the rule. Now, we've been saying, if we mentioned yesterday, that sending a gift that may not even be used on Yontif, but could be used on Yontif, we say that increases the joy of Yontif because sending a gift brings joy to a person. Okay? But now everything in our Mishnah right now said, though, but okay, but if it's something that, you need a craftsman to be, if something is, you're sending not food, you're sending these things, that's cloths or whatever it may be. If you're going to send them, so we see that they have to have a Yontif use, and they have to, now Rebuda adds that if they're missing, if they're actually usable, but they wouldn't be usable because you still need to finish them up. So again, they're not usable, you can't send them. Zeh klal, this is the rule. Anything that is fit to be used on Yontif, you can send it as a gift on Yontif. Now, what that means is like this. Bartanur explains what that means. This zeh klal, this is the rule. What it's coming to teach you is that anything that during the week you could benefit from as is, it needs no more work for it to be done, for it to be completed. You can send it on Yontif even though you wouldn't actually use it on Yontif. So anything that during the week is something that is completed, and that's how you would use it, even though they don't use it on Yontif, like by tefillin. Oh, so what's the example of that they give? The example of that is tefillin. When I send somebody tefillin on Yontif. Now, if you're going to ask me, isn't tefillin muktzah? I don't know what the answer to that is. There's a whole discussion about how muktzah tefillin is. But the example that's used in the Bartanura is, you want to send somebody a pair of tefillin on Yontif. Now, he's not going to wear it on Yontif. You don't wear tefillin on Yontif. But during the week, it's complete. It's a completed article. So if it's a completed article, you can send it on Yontif. But if it's incomplete, like that shoe that wasn't blackened yet, right? It's not complete, and it needs a craftsman. It needs something to complete it, and you quit, and it's something that you couldn't do on Yontif to complete it. That's considered something that has no use for Yontif, and therefore you cannot send it. So if we try to wrap this up all together, and there's going to be one more point we have to make. So we have the Mishnah saying that, if you're going to send, you got to send something that has a use for Yontif. Has to have a use for Yontif. So therefore, and we say the cloths, whether as clothing, whether as covering, whether they're sitting on, they're usable for you. They have a Yontif use, and therefore you can go ahead and you can send them. Now, what Rabbi Yehuda said was, talked about the shoe, and he said that when it comes to the shoe, so is it usable? Well, it's not usable. Why is it not usable? Because it's not completed. So if it's not completed, and then in that situation they wouldn't use it, that you can't go ahead and send on Yontif. And then he says, zeh klal, this is the rule. Anything that you could benefit from, anything that's complete and you could use it during the week, you can go ahead and send it on Yontif, even though it has no use on Yontif. Now, that seemingly is arguing with the first opinion, right? The first opinion says it has to have a Yontif need. Tefillah doesn't have a Yontif need. But Rabbi Yehuda seems to be saying that even it doesn't have an actual Yontif need, but if it is usable as is, then you can send it on Yontif. Now, there's 2 points that I have to make. I missed something before. The first part of the Mishnah talked about sending the cloths. Sewn, not sewn, as long as they have a yontif purpose, you can send them. Now, it doesn't say who the author of the Mishnah is. Right? The previous Mishnah, we had a machlokes Beis Shammai Beis Hillel, right? Beis Shammai said, if you send food, it's got to be prepared. Beis Hillel said, you can send even unprepared, as long as you could possibly prepare it on yontif. And now the Mishnah says, we send utensils, and it doesn't say who's the author of the Mishnah, who's saying this. And from the way the notes brings down from the commentaries, it would seem that quoting the commentary of the Baal Hamor, who's a Rishon, that Beis Shammai actually does not agree with this part of the Mishnah. According to Beis Shammai, you can only send food. The only gift you can send someone on Yontif is food that is ready to eat. If it's not food, and it's not if it's not food or it's food that's not ready to eat, you can't send it according to Beis Shammai. So this first part of the Mishnah is Beis Hillel. To be able to even contemplate sending non-foods, that's Beis Hillel, not Beis Shammai. Now, in Rabbi Yehuda concluded with this rule that if you can use it by day, if it can be used during the weekday, meaning it's complete, it's usable. Then we say you can send it on Yontif. For example, the pair of tefillin, not going to use it on Yontif, but you can send it anyway because it is usable. You don't need to do anything more to it. So the notes brings down here a question. Now, actually, assuming that Rabbi Yehuda doesn't argue what Beis Hillel said before, which he seemingly is not, because he's saying that it doesn't have to be a food to be able to be sent. Beis Hillel said like this. Beis Hillel said, you can send a chicken, right? You can send a chicken on Yontif, even though it's not slaughtered, even though it's not ready. Even though it's not ready. Now, Rabbi Yehuda, we just read that if you want to send it on Yontif, it's got to be usable. Raw chicken isn't usable. You got to do more to it. So listen to this. We learned in the previous Mishnah that Beis Hillel allows sending a live animal on Yontif, even though it is not fit to be used as is. It requires slaughtering and cooking, right? As is, you can't use it. Never. That lenient ruling, however, applies only to something that can be used on Yontif itself. In the case of items that will not be used on Yontif, such as tefillin, the act of sending increases the enjoyment of Yontif only if it is a finished product. So Beis Hillel is talking about, when Beis Hillel say you can send something that's not ready, that's talking about something that you could actually benefit from on Yontif. This statement that it has to be something that is usable, even if you're not going to use it on is usable, is talking about something that you're not going to use on Yontif. It's not usable on Yontif, like a pair of tefillin. In that situation, what you're sending has to be usable. So that's the difference between before and now. We don't see Rabbi Yehuda arguing what Honorable Beis Hillel said before. It means Rabbi Yehuda agrees that you could send a live chicken. It's not usable. The answer is yes, but I could use it on Yontif. Since I can shecht it on Yontif and I can cook it on Yontif, it's usable on Yontif. But if I'm sending something that's not going to be used on Yontif, and you want to say, well, just sending the gift increases joy, there we say it has to be usable. If it's not usable, even not going to use it on Yontif, but it's not usable at all, then you cannot send it on Yontif. That's the point here that Rabbi Yehuda. That's the point when the Mishnah says Za'akal. This is the rule. Have a wonderful Shabbos.
Thank you, Roy. You too.
Okay.